Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Weidman.
This is Diego Sanchez, Randy Couture,
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio, episode 199. Episode 199. It's the 4th of December, a Wednesday here out of Melbourne, Australia. Dennis Screw out of here with Casper Rosalowski, fresh from his trip to Brisbane. Unfortunately, we weren't around last week, Cass, but a very, very fun lineup for the listeners today.
Yeah, that's right. You did a great job this week, Dennis. You really brought the sexy. We got a bunch of sexy guests, sexy interviews for you guys. We got Tito Ortiz jumping back on the program. I feel like we're always interviewing him before his final fight, and then he comes and unretires and then makes himself relevant again. He's, of course, taking on Alberto Rodriguez, Alberto Patron, Alberto Del Rio, however you want to call him, the former WWE champion at Combate Americas this weekend. So we figured what better time to get the man on to chat about a whole bunch of things. Obviously, the fight itself, him unretiring, his Cain Velasquez rumors, the 30 for 30, his relationship with Dana White and the UFC these days, comments on Jon Jones, might even fit a couple of Conor McGregor questions in there. So there's a lot to talk to Tito about, and I'm very excited. Also, speaking of Jon Jones, the man who takes on Jon Jones next year, Dominick Reyes, never been on Submission Radio before, but I'm very excited to chat to him and really kind of unpack his journey from his humble beginnings, his dreams of being in the NFL, to now fighting Jon Jones for the belt, still on ESPN, but not necessarily the sport that he originally thought. So there's a lot to talk to Dominick Reyes about. Also, one of our favorite guys, Jon Anik, returned to the program to discuss some of the big news stories in MMA. Obviously, Conor McGregor's fight being finally announced when he takes on Donald Cerrone on January 18th. Of course, Tony and Khabib finally becoming official. You got 245 around the corner, Colby and Usman. You got so many other fights, Volkanovski and Max Holloway. So digest all of those things with Jon Anik. Tyson Pedro, the man obviously injured in his last fight against Shogun Rua at UFC Adelaide. Got a cheeky little memory on my social media to say that it was already a year ago, and now finally making his return after the knee reconstruction, fighting at UFC Auckland. So a great place for him to fight. And of course, Anthony Walker, one of our favorites, the man known for his great work on Sherdog and his writing for MMA On Point and their videos. He's going to be jumping on the program to talk about Anthony Joshua taking on Andy Ruiz Jr. this weekend in a massive, massive rematch in the boxing world. So there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of sexy discussion and a lot of sexy guests, Dennis.
That's right. I mean, sexiness all around. Anthony Walker, by the way, #1 free agent, draft pick in the game right now. So I can't wait to hear what's coming up in 2020 for Anthony Walker. It's going to be exciting to have him back on the program. One part of the Backfist Boys. If you don't know the Backfist Boys, look it up. That's with a Z at the end. Backfist
for
Boys.
Extra street cred.
Extra street cred. And also, apparently, we go up higher in the charts. Yeah. The kids like the Z's at the end. But before we go to the first guest, Cass, just a quick mention. Musashi, they're our sponsor. Just want to quickly thank them and remind everybody out there that when you buy your Musashi product, mention us on Instagram, tag us on Twitter. We'd love to share it. It is the Musashi way, some of the best stuff out there, Cass. People know there's proteins, supplements, pre-workouts, all sort of stuff. Check it out. Musashi, super tasty. And, of course, give us your comments down below under the video if you feel like you want to share your thoughts. We love your comments. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Our DMs are open. We love chatting to you guys. But with that, Cass, we have our first guest on the line. Your Facebook memories brought him up, and now he is here to set the record straight. Our next guest is booked to make his UFC return with over a year out of action due to a knee injury. He returns to UFC Auckland from the area, one half of the Half Cast podcast. It's great to have friend of the show, Tyson Pedro, back on Submission Radio. Tyson, we appreciate you coming on the show. We understand we disturbed a nap, which by Casper standards, if I ever woke Casper up from a nap, I don't think he'd speak to me for weeks. No. So we appreciate you coming on the program.
Oh, good boys.
Oh,
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure, man. And I got to say, it's exciting to sort of see that you finally got a date and opponent. I imagine that after sort of being on the sidelines for a bit, this is exciting for you. How does it feel to finally get an official date on your UFC return?
Exciting as. I'm glad it's in New Zealand, across the not too far across the pond, but I just want to get it back in there. It's been ages. It's been a long road recovery, and yeah, just want to go get punched in the face again.
Yeah, well, speaking of that recovery, I mean, we saw on Instagram that even though, you've had to deal with the knee healing up, you've been in the gym working pretty much from day one. I mean, many people would have been like, serious knee injury, maybe this is it. I don't know if I can be bothered coming back from it. But you was almost super motivated by the knee injury to come back stronger and better than ever. Tell us a little bit about that period and sort of initially getting into the gym after getting that knee fixed up.
Yeah, I think like at first when it happened, there's always the down that you got injured, whatever. I had my little holiday, but then I was straight into prehab before the surgery, and then as soon as the surgery happened, I was just like, man, I'm getting in the gym straight back, and my right leg's probably stronger than my left leg now. I was working with Ethos Performance, and they pumped me. Like, so there's all of the single leg stuff. I'll tell you what, I'm over single leg squats, and it's they're bitch, and even the rear dead whatever they are, RDLs or something with the deadlift bar.
Oh yeah.
I'm overweight, so I'm not. I hate lifting weights, and that's all I've been doing for the last year. So I'm ready just to get back in and start throwing hands.
Hey, just quickly on how it happened against Shogun in Adelaide. What was the deal with your knee? Was it hurt previously going into the fight, or was it just like a freak thing that happened when you moved and kind of slipped out?
I had strong as knees before that. I've never had problems with my knees before. Son of a bitch kicked my other leg out and snapped my leg in half.
Jesus.
So he had my back. I think it was like the first, or actually it was the second round. He kicked out my leg to try and get me to the ground, and when he did, my knee buckled in, and I just felt it snap straight away. So he knew straight away when he went to press me, my knee buckled in, and he looked down, and then he sort of just went, all right, go time. And then, yeah, pretty much punched the shit out of me for the next 2 rounds.
Shogun, you bastard. How could you do such a thing? I'm just wondering, what did you take away from that fight? Because I remember before the fight, you were so excited to fight a legend like Shogun. And the thing is, like, you came dangerously close to finishing him at one point. It was actually a pretty exciting fight. So going in there, and going through the injury, you never at any point gave up. So I guess what was the biggest takeaway for you after that fight? And were there any lessons for you going away from it?
Always. Story of my life. Just that close. OSP just before that. So
yeah,
it's I think, yeah, I don't know. Don't get injured. It's the biggest lesson. That's why he's a vet. He withstood the storm and then came back and still managed to find a way to win. I guess that's why they're vets. But I don't know. That's about it. I was watching it back, and there's a lot of little stuff that I was still doing wrong, but I'll still be doing little stuff wrong for probably the rest of my MMA career. It's never a perfect fight, and it never goes to plan.
I mean, you didn't get a fight at UFC 243 recently in Melbourne. We know you were there. You were there for your teammate Tito Ortiz, who unfortunately went through a loss as well. But was it difficult for you not to be a part of that sort of history-making card at Marvel Stadium and sort of being in another position there as a sort of a supporter, a fan, and a team member?
Nah. I was happy not to be on that fight card. I wasn't ready. Definitely. That would have pushed me being in a fight camp too much prior, and my knee wasn't ready then. It's crazy how much like a couple months can affect how much recovery it is. So I guess the sheer like size of the fight, that was pretty cool, but I was happy to be on the beers of that fight.
Well, you mentioned, the beers would have been flowing there at UFC 243. I'm wondering, you mentioned New Zealand, how it's just a short distance from Australia. What does it mean to you, sort of, with your heritage, to be fighting in New Zealand? I imagine it'd be a pretty big deal.
It's always the Anzac, so Australia and New Zealand, keeping it down here, it's always good. I can't, the more fights we get down here, the better. Keeping the belts down here, the better. It's better. It's just for fighting in general. Plus, the fighters that we're bringing out, it's crazy. So I'm about to pop over there, I think, this Sunday.
Well, because we were looking on Wikipedia. You were born in New Zealand, weren't you? I know you're from the area, but weren't you born in New Zealand?
I think Wikipedia got you again. I think you got batooted, boys.
Oh, no.
Well,
What do you mean? So is your family from New Zealand, or is this just a complete lie?
Bro, I'm the area as well. Born in Penrith, born and raised in the Pean Hospital.
What about your dad?
That's born. Yeah, now he's stretching, but he's Oceanside, California.
What about his dad?
I think the boat might have passed New Zealand or something on the way.
Okay, we'll take it.
That counts.
So at
for
some
sure.
point, your heritage is that your great grandfather went on a boat past New Zealand. So it's just
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna get that
his passport stamped on the way through or something.
Well, I was gonna say it is even though you weren't born there, it is gonna be your first fight over there in New Zealand. You mentioned that the Anzac spirit is strong. You obviously went through the loss in Adelaide, and Ty had a difficult time in Melbourne. But overall, the Anzacs have been sort of killing it. Axel Konofsky, for example, a friend of yours, he'll be fighting for the title at the end of the year. City Kickboxing over there in Auckland, killing it at the moment. Israel being champion. What do you make of this sort of Anzac takeover that's going on in the UFC right now?
Man, they're just killers over there. They have some of the best strikers, and that's I guess that's why we've planned to head over there. I just want to go get beat up over there for a little bit. So, they're just New Zealand's always produced amazing kickboxers and had some of the best kickboxers. Go back to Mark, Doug Viney over there, and like not just naming a few, but. I don't know it's the same as Western Sydney bringing out hard fighters. They come from a hard place and they've got the skill to back it.
Because I know that in the past you've trained over in Thailand, and then obviously at Cerrone's BMF Ranch. So it's official for this one. You'll be going to train at City Kickboxing, right?
Yeah, I think as much as I love Thailand, I think it's just too much of a holiday for me. The sun and the beaches. I want to go over, and I like going to places that scare me, and these guys scare the shit out of me, having all these big dudes that can just bash you, so I like that.
I imagine it doesn't hurt also, that the middleweight champion is there. I know you're light heavyweight, but everybody always says Israel's a lot bigger in real life. I imagine it's pretty good getting to get some rounds in with a guy like him, especially with his striking pedigree, right?
Oh, yeah, if I get the chance to spar him, of course, that'll be amazing. But you never know. I don't go to any gym going like, oh, I'm a UFC fighter, I expect this coach, I expect that. It's not a good way to go to the gym. I could end up sparring the amateurs for the first week. It doesn't matter where you go, you got to earn your stripes. So
yeah, well, I mean, that's obviously a great sort of mentality to have. Do you think this could be like your permanent new home? Because I always get the sense that you're sort of experimenting and you're happy to like go from different camps. Do you think this could be a mainstay for you? Or
I'd really like it to be. I'd really like it to be. But you never know. That's why we're going over to try it now. It's the thing is, there's no one camp over here. So it's there is what Rob's doing. I get it. But he's still driving to different coaches. That's a big thing for me. Not driving from. I go to Bondi, then Castle Hill, then Blacktown and then Homebush for all my different whatever different coach I'm seeing. So I'd like it to be. So even if I do like it, even what Alex does is he's done it pretty well, where he's trained with Joe, and then Thailand a little bit, and then finishes it off in City. So we'll see. I'm going to be over for a long time because I think that we're coming up to like 12 weeks or something, but I need to get my timing back in, my eye back in, make sure that it's all, when you've been out of fighting for a long time, you got to make sure you have a longer camp.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny, I feel like City Kickboxing is like the Jackson Wink of New Zealand, because Albuquerque's kind of like quiet. There's not a lot to do, not too many distractions. And I feel like NZ, or at least that area, is kind of similar as well. Except for bungee jumping. That could be a good, fun distraction.
I was just talking about this yesterday, and that's why I like going there. Same reason with like Thailand being, like a holiday place. Mexico's shit. There's nothing to do there. Oh, not shit. Sorry, New Mexico, but it's like a desert. It's and hot. And then Auckland, it's gonna be cold and like not much to do. It's just go fight. That's why they're so good there.
Yeah.
What else do you go do? So
Everybody in Auckland right now is like, fuck these guys. They're not coming over to train over here. What are you trying to... Auckland, we appreciate you. There are things to do there. You can go to the movies. Have you been to the movies? There's a lot of good movies out lately, Tyson.
Yeah, well, I don't take it back, but it's cold as shit there, and I'm not a cold fan. So
Hey, you're from New Zealand, man. You should be supporting Auckland.
I know it's going to be good. Auckland's beautiful. I'm going on holidays afterwards, but it's just cold. I'm not a cold person.
Yeah.
Where are you going on holiday, in New Zealand or somewhere else?
No, well, I want to do that South Island. So fly into South Island and then drive back up to Auckland and then fly out that way.
Mm-hmm.
Fly out that way. Okay, cool.
Yeah. You know, fly out where my dad was born.
Yeah. Well, I think you got to take a ship there technically, but yeah. I want to talk about your opponent, Tyson. Obviously, Vinicius Moreira. He's on a 3-fight skid, and sometimes that's when a fighter is most dangerous as they fight for their UFC spot. What are you sort of expecting from him in Auckland?
Yeah, I just said this as well. When your back's up against the wall, that's when you're gonna start swinging harder. I haven't actually watched any of his tape yet. I will be doing a lot of tape study, but again, he's bro, that could be me. You never know, like with the UFC. So my back could be up against the wall here. So he better be ready for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing in the UFC. One day you're the headliner, and then the next day you got to deal with something like that. I'm just wondering, you mentioned how you spend a lot of time lifting weights and you want to get your reflexes down, you want to get the work in at City Kickboxing, but do you imagine when you get back in there, there'll be a few new little tricks, a few new little sort of movements that we haven't seen from Tyson Pedro before that you want to sort of implement in this one?
Yeah, like bench press and deadlifts.
Over your head. Just drop him down.
Like if he tries to side mount me, like I'll just bench press him off me.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. The other thing that you're doing that everybody loves is, of course, the Half Caste podcast. And you had a really good episode with Stan Walker, who, for those listening internationally, he's a singer here in Australia and New Zealand. He's super talented. He actually does my favorite rendition of Tennessee Whiskey. I reckon it's the best one out there. Check it out if you have. Yeah, that thing's crazy. Tell us, how's the show been going? Have you enjoyed it? And what's coming up in 2020 for those who are sort of looking forward to what's next?
Man, I think we've actually been getting better at interviewing people. That's made a massive difference. Like Ty's coming out of his show with his questions as well. So like even with the Stan Walker one, man, it's getting pretty cool to interview people because we're able to start getting what we actually need to get out of them for the show. So but this year's hopefully getting bigger. Now we can start doing like Skype interviews like you're doing because I'm going to be overseas. We didn't really have the technology behind us to do that before, so it was more like a lapel microphone and that was it. But yeah, so we should be able to get a couple shows out. We got I think Mitch James on today. He's another singer that supports 660s on Monday. So yeah, starting to get some names in there.
That's awesome. I have no idea what lapel mic is, Tyson. We don't have your fancy futuristic technology over here, man. But not bad for a couple of guys from the area, right? Interviewing some of the biggest names, in this part of the region.
Well, we started in Ty's shed, so it's going all right.
And not to mention that your manager, Zen, is becoming a music mogul, right? The Jinnin Group taking over. I believe there's Grammy-nominated artists, world tours. That's a pretty good...
Don't get a free show. No, that's a joke, Zen. I'm joking. He's doing very well, taking over. I'm pretty sure he's going to be managing everyone in the UFC too as well.
Has he gotten a deal for Red Velvet yet with the Guinness Group, or what are we doing?
But he needs to get me some deals.
Get Tyson Pedro some deals. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, hopefully I'm heading over to NZ, so that's his home, so he can start. He can sort me out all over there. You should see me all over the news because Zen's got all the hookups there.
Yeah, there you go. The NZ, it'll be the Anzac takeover, but also the NZ takeover for Tyson Pedro. Ty's going to be coming with you, right? You can't have a fight week without both of you. It's a 2-for-1 combo, right?
Who knows? He makes moves, and I think he's gone. Might be sneaking over to Vegas. So if he can convince my sister that he can go to Vegas and then straight to NZ afterwards, then yeah, probably.
Well, I'll tell you what, we may never see Tai Tuivasa again, but Tyson Pedro fights in Auckland, his hometown, on February 23rd. Follow the man on Twitter and Instagram at Tyson_Pedro. And catch the Half Cast podcast available on YouTube, Spotify, and where you listen to your podcasts. It's one of our favorite shows that we like to check out. The guys are definitely worth checking out. They're hilarious, and they have some great questions. Tyson, thank you so much for joining us here today, man. We can't wait to speak to you again and find out what your impression of New Zealand is and how your time of city kickboxing is going. Thank you so much for waking up from your nap for us.
Yeah.
That's special.
Thank you very much for having me, boys.
Thanks,
I'll
Tyson.
see you soon.
Bye.
See you in New Zealand.
Yep.
Hey, this is Tony Okagui Ferguson, and you guys listen to Submission Radio. Keep tuning in, guys.
All right, guys. Our next guest is the UFC's lead play-by-play commentator, ESPN host, and analyst, an all-around good guy. He is also known to get the occasional cheeky tattoo when the mood fits. You also know him from the fantastic Anik and Florian podcast. He is Jon Anik himself. John, welcome back to Submission Radio in a little studio with some sick memorabilia around and behind you. Thanks so much for coming on, man. How are you?
Always a pleasure to talk to you, fellas. I'm doing well. How are you guys? I mean, it's a makeshift studio if you guys are watching us and not just listening to us, but we're trying to do what we can. I mean, crooked pictures. I don't know what to tell you. This is no Joe Rogan experience. What are you going to do?
I know it's better because Jon Anik is in the house. And as the year,
My
here
man.
we go. He's like, here we go. They're starting to kiss my ass already. Here we go. And by the way, while we're kissing your ass, Casper didn't mention it in the intro, but a man that was in the best MMA movie of all time.
Yeah.
Warrior. Yeah.
I thought it was a great movie, and I'm glad that the article on MMA Junkie articulated the fact that it was not just a good MMA movie. I thought it was a pretty strong movie overall, and certainly some of the actors were awarded for their role. I was just happy to have like a few wardrobe changes, and it was very surreal for us. It came together very quickly, the small role that we had with ESPN MMA Live, and it was actually 2 days before my wedding, so it sort of put a wedge in my wife's wedding week a little bit, but they call your number to play yourself in a major motion picture. I think you got to take that call, and so I took the call. I was a little late to Boston for the wedding, and here we are.
Did you make it up to her by inviting Nick Nolte and Tom Hardy to the wedding?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Nolte would have respectfully declined, despite how open the bar was,
Yeah. Oh, man. Nolte gets a lot of airtime around Submission Radio. We always reference that movie. But I'm just wondering, John, all right, there's already one crazy story from a few years ago, but as the year comes to an end and 2019 is almost in the books, when you look at the past year, all the events, all the time you've spent on the road, all the crazy moments you got to witness cage side, what's so far the memory or moment that sort of stands out to you that you might leave 2019 thinking about?
It feels like the year of Jorge Masvidal, and it's crazy to think that he might end up the runner-up in a lot of these Fighter of the Year conversations, and the ESPY will probably go to Israel Adesanya, and certainly I could sit here and wax poetic about the last Stylebender for 2 minutes, but I think when you look big picture at what Jorge Masvidal has done in mixed martial arts over 16, soon to be 17 years, to finally reap the financial benefits and get paydays that are going to support children and change his life a little bit. He's obviously able to monetize his brand now, which is a great brand. And speaking of tattoos, I got the Game Bread tattoo is coming. It's just a question of whether we're going neck piece like he does, or if we're going to go in a little more subtle location. But the Game Bread tattoo is coming. And
Mike Tyson style.
Yeah. I eat too much, so it would swell up and then it would go back down. That wouldn't be a good look. But Masvidal, the lasting image, obviously what he did against Ben Askren, and to follow it up with a masterpiece despite sort of an anticlimactic conclusion there against Nathan Diaz. To me, Jorge Masvidal is the story of 2019, and I'm excited to see what he can do with it moving forward, because if Colby Covington is able to emerge against Kamaru Usman and Covington and Masvidal end up fighting for the undisputed welterweight title, that's insanity when you think about where those two men were a few years ago, sitting right there with me and Coach, buddy to buddy in an airplane, sitting next to each other. I think Covington was in the middle seat. Gamebred was on the aisle, but just crazy. So I'm very happy for that human being, and we'll see how he does in 2020. Certainly 2019 for Gamebred will be a tough act to follow.
I'm just wondering, you're on the plane with Colby Covington and Masvidal. What's that like? Do you have any stories for us? What do you guys talk about?
It was a long time ago, and I don't even know that I realized that it was them until pretty late in the flight. But
wow.
I think it just speaks to how close they were, and I don't know how much they've both gone down that path in terms of explaining the depth of their relationship publicly. But they were buddies, man. They were tight. And you can see they're two good dudes. You can see why they would have related on a number of different levels. But, man, if they end up fighting, it'll be something. Of course, Kamaru Usman figures to have something to say about that. But no great game bred stories. I guess the best one for me is in 2009. I did Bellator Season 1. And I believe, if memory serves, he weighed in at 158 pounds for either his first or second Bellator appearance. And Bjorn Rebney, at the time, the CEO and founder of Bellator, said something to the effect of George, you got to cut the final 2 pounds. And Masvidal, it was more like, fuck you, dude. I'm not cutting the final 2. And I'm getting sort of my indoctrination into mixed martial arts. And I'm like, all right, that dude's the man. He's got a game bred tattoo on his neck, and he just told the CEO to fuck off, essentially. So I've always been a Masvidal guy. Of course, I live in South Florida, so seeing him own this market, which a lot of us thought he could do, has been very special as well. Certainly getting the Miami push, and rightfully so. So, yeah, happy for game bred, but it's been a huge year, obviously, for the UFC in a number of ways.
Well, no, I can hear Nate Diaz right now listening to this interview being like, that Jon Anik, he's on his team, man. He's on the wrong team. Get the wrong treatment. I was going to say, though, what you go, but also, what would it take for you to get the game bred tattoo? I know you like the tattoo bets. What do you think the wager could be? Could it be for his next fight? Could it be possibly if he fights for the title?
Well, what's interesting about the 209 tattoo that I have is that it was a tattoo that I wanted. And once Nate, to whatever degree, took issue with it, I was going to get the tattoo win or lose. And as I tweeted that night, I'm more than happy to acknowledge the Diaz brothers with finality by putting it on my body. That's how much I respect those two individuals. So, no, the game bred tattoo is happening. Like, I've talked to George about it. He's going to get his game bred touched up. We're going to go together. I mean, it's like, there's no wager for that one. I don't know how soon it will happen. But I don't know. I just have a lot of respect for these athletes. I might get the FE for Frankie Edgar. We're just going to go crazy with the tattoos and just see just how inked up we can get before we're done with this thing.
Jon Anik, soon to be divorced and living in a one-bedroom apartment by himself.
Sorry, honey.
Third weekend.
Sorry, honey.
That's all good. It's the kids who suffer, John. Anyway, let's talk. Let me just quickly bring up this Conor McGregor thing, because we're talking about Masvidal, and a lot of people are sort of throwing out some theories out there that if Conor McGregor comes back against Cowboy Cerrone and wins, the real money fight is this Masvidal McGregor fight, especially seeing as he's coming back and fighting Cerrone at welterweight. What do you think about that fight potentially happening instead of Masvidal fighting for the title?
Well, I understand why McGregor-Cerrone is happening at welterweight. I'm not sure that it benefits all parties in totality, but it would be an interesting jump, right? If the winner of McGregor-Cerrone would get a lightweight championship opportunity, let's say it's Conor, you win a fight, and everybody's sort of suggesting just needs a win to get back on a championship trajectory. But if you win a fight against Donald Cerrone coming off a couple losses and do it at 70, are you worthy of a lightweight rematch against Khabib? I think the short answer is yes. Conor's body of work would maybe give him an inside track on that opportunity. But yeah, I think the Masvidal fight has legs. I think McGregor would have an appetite for it. Anyone not named Conor McGregor will have the appetite to fight him for obvious reasons. I think Masvidal was very candid, obviously, after he beat Nate Diaz in terms of the size discrepancy and how he would handicap a matchup with Conor. But certainly Masvidal, Adesanya on the short list of the biggest names in the sport right now in Conor's absence. Respect to Khabib in that conversation as well. But certainly that fight would have to have legs, even if I'd be a little bit surprised, at least sitting here December 2019, if that was the next fight for Conor after this one.
Yeah, I almost feel like between Masvidal and Diaz, I almost feel like Conor would lean towards Diaz. And I feel like Masvidal, if he's got the choice, all right, you can fight for the belt or you can wait and possibly fight Conor McGregor. You got to think that guy's waiting, right? He's all about the big checks at the moment. I would just hate to be Justin Gaethje and be around him if the news was delivered that, oh yeah, Conor McGregor, if he beats Cerrone, would be the next guy, in line for the lightweight title. I'm just wondering, John, what you think about this Cerrone matchup as an option, because people were saying, look, it should be Cerrone or Justin Gaethje. Cerrone good for, and I don't want to say this disrespectfully, but kind of like a warm-up fight for Conor, whereas Justin Gaethje, he would be more of a statement in the division. You beat that guy, then you're definitely in line for the title. So what do you think about Cerrone, being the guy that Conor ended up with?
Well, in terms of lifetime achievement awards, if an award is a Conor McGregor fight, I think we'd all agree that Donald Cerrone, given his body of work, is richly deserving. But can you guys imagine the extent to which the doors would have blown off the place if Conor's return fight was Justin Gaethje? Can you imagine the response from the MMA masses? So all credit to Cerrone. I certainly think he's a live underdog if you're looking at him in that plus 220, plus 240 range, especially because the fight's going to happen at welterweight and not lightweight. But yeah, I mean, I certainly think that a Gaethje fight for Conor would have been potentially more dangerous. I think some people would suggest otherwise, but potentially would be more dangerous. The one thing I will tell you without a shadow of a doubt, according to Las Vegas, the way they would handicap a Gaethje-Conor fight, it certainly would be a lot closer than at least the early returns on Cerrone and Conor McGregor. But again, two of the biggest names in the sport. I don't know what the internal metrics say about Cerrone and Gaethje as far as their ability to move the needle, but you got to think Cowboy had the inside track there. But it's a big fight. It's had legs in some respects since 2015, so I understand why the promotion went in this direction, and I got a healthy appetite for it, even if it wasn't necessarily choice number one for me.
Some people are saying, Conor McGregor is a guy that's always sort of went for the hardest challenge, wanting to fight Aldo, wanting to fight Alvarez, wanting to fight Khabib with a hurt leg, not caring when RDA was hurt. Bring Nate Diaz in, he says. I don't really care. And then he chooses Cerrone out of the Cerrone-Gaethje option. It's kind of the first time he's looking, and I don't want to call Cerrone a lesser opponent, but maybe a less dangerous option. And there's some theories to this. Some people say maybe Conor McGregor doesn't have the same confidence that he once had. And others are saying maybe it's because Cowboy Cerrone isn't the kind of guy that's going to be using trash talk and talking about some of these things that have been going on in Conor McGregor's life that he doesn't want to really be brought to light during fight week. What do you make of the real reason behind why he chose Cerrone for sort of a step down for the first time in the options that he's picked?
Yeah, I mean, I think you set up a lot of interesting talking points. And again, you can't just dismiss Las Vegas when it comes to handicapping a fight, right? Because it's a lens through which a lot of people look at the fights. And certainly they believe that Conor McGregor, at least in this instance, has chosen a more winnable fight in Donald Cerrone versus Justin Gaethje. I think there are a lot of different elements to it, though. I think that Cerrone also had an appetite for this fight that the promotion wanted to reward. And I think they were happy to sort of reciprocate when Conor was on board. I mean, Conor, after the Alexander Hernandez win for Cerrone, he really wanted to fight Donald when he had all of that momentum. And at the time, if you recall, that looked to be a super dangerous fight. So I think maybe we shouldn't discount what Donald Cerrone is able to do with this opportunity. But yeah, there are a lot of interesting layers to it. As far as the path of least resistance for Conor, you're right. I mean, he has always wanted to bite off more than he can chew. I mean, even the Mendez fight, his knee was half torn, and there was no way he was going to pull out of that fight in a very difficult matchup. I know there were weird circumstances for Chad as well, short notice and otherwise, but I give Conor a lot of credit, obviously, for some of those early decisions, and he's got a dangerous fight in front of him. He really does. It isn't Justin Gaethje, a madman on a 3-fight winning streak necessarily, but it is the winningest fighter in UFC history, and we all obviously respect that.
And I
Present
think
company included.
Absolutely, and I think what also kind of closes the distance and makes it a closer fight is that Conor McGregor would be coming off a massive, massive layoff. With his style, based on sort of timing, that's not exactly something that's going to help him against Cerrone. And I'm wondering, what you're going to expect from Conor McGregor as he comes from not only a layoff, but a pretty turbulent year with, everything that's happened with him in his private life, and just sort of, getting his feet under him against Donald Cerrone. What are you expecting from Conor?
It's interesting because normally when Donald Cerrone fights, he is actually the lesser known quantity in terms of his preparation because of the extracurricular stuff that he likes to do. And sometimes you just don't know exactly what Donald Cerrone's 6 or 8 week training camp has held. I think on the Cerrone side of this, a layoff dating to last September, I say last September, it was a few months ago, but I think this is actually a good schedule for Cerrone. McGregor's a greater unknown, obviously. I mean, there's some rumblings about the Kavanaugh-McGregor relationship and why haven't maybe they been more public about what they've been doing, getting ready for this presumed January 18th date. I expect Conor McGregor to present an outstanding version of himself. I have gone down this path where I do believe Conor cares deeply about his MMA legacy. And even though he was the first simultaneous two-division UFC champion, he didn't defend those titles. And he wants to get back on a championship course. And I truly do believe that. And I believe he thinks if he wins this fight, he will be right back on that championship course. I think that's what's driving him. To come out and lay an egg or not be in shape, I just don't think it's in the cards. I understand the timeline feels a little rushed, and Conor hasn't been out there publicly with his shirt off necessarily. There was a hand injury that was not all that long ago, but I expect Conor to present an in-shape, great version and certainly maximize, the next 6 or 7 weeks that we have here.
I mean, wins and losses matter so much in MMA, and we've seen Conor come back from losses and still be a bigger star as ever. But if Cerrone does manage to pull it off and beat Conor McGregor here, I mean, what does this mean for Conor McGregor? And 2 losses in a row, then losing against Cerrone. Could this possibly be the end of this whole Conor McGregor era?
Well, it's interesting because if you subscribe to my theory, then you would say absolutely not. He's got to regroup at 155 pounds and try to prove himself again. I think he loves competition enough that at this point in his life, I don't think he wants to just pursue other endeavors with his whole self. I do think he wants to keep a toe in the MMA water, if not really make a run. So I'd be surprised to see him walk away. All of that being said, I don't know what his financial situation is. I'd imagine it's quite good. His bankroll is certainly fatter than ours is, but I don't know how he's managed his money. I don't know if he really wants to take care of generation upon generation. I don't know what his motivation is, but what I think it is to compete in mixed martial arts. And if that's the case, even with a loss to Cerrone, I think you'll see him in another big fight this summer. I really do.
I think I also like that he's per Ariel Helwani, he's kind of outlined his plan that he wants to fight not only more often, but he's got kind of a trajectory that he wants this fight. He wants, maybe Masvidal, maybe Diaz, and then he wants to fight Khabib by the end. I feel like with that little plan, it just adds so many stakes to Conor's next fight, because even though people see this as kind of like a comeback fight, we're already expecting so many things, and now it's like, a video game. We're following the trajectory, and we know the end goal for him. But, speaking of Khabib, obviously, finally we got confirmation that him versus Tony Ferguson is official for April of next year, which is kind of a scary amount of time in between, now and that fight. A lot of things potentially happening. But when you look at this fight, people have wanted it for so long. And when you look at, Tony, his body of work, his winning streak, how much of a big deal do you think this is for Khabib's legacy to get a win over this guy? I imagine this is a scalp that he's wanted for a very, very long time.
So we're 11 days out from Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman, right? But I can sit here and tell you that Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov is singularly one of the biggest sporting events of my lifetime. And I bring up Covington Usman in the context of the fact that I'm sitting here thinking that one's pretty big as far as my sports lifetime is concerned as well. But Khabib and Tony is off the charts. I remember being in a van with Joe Silva after Tony beat Edson Barboza. And I said to Joe, I was like, got to be a title fight next for Tony, right? And Khabib was not the champion at the time. And Joe Silva turned to me. He's like, no, I want to do Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov. And I was like, that's why you're the fucking matchmaker, And here we are almost 5 years later. Take 5. It shall be done. I think even if you're 60% and you're Tony and Khabib, you probably got to make the walk because this thing just has to happen. We spent a lot of time on our podcast this week just talking about Tony Ferguson's legacy and how remarkable it is that he hasn't competed for the undisputed UFC lightweight championship. For Khabib's legacy, that's the greatest part of this for me, is the fact that he so badly wants to beat this guy and add this scalp to his resume, right? A lot of respect, and I'm a broken record when it comes to this, but these champions like Adesanya and Khabib, there maybe are bigger names or bigger money fights out there cross-divisionally, and all they want to do is prove themselves against the true number one contenders in their division, whether it's Paulo Costa or Tony Ferguson. All the respect in the world for Khabib. It's a dream fight for me. I'm anxious just talking to you boys about it. Maybe I should ask off the call because I don't know. I just need to sit back and watch and enjoy. I mean, I'm telling you, boys, we are so anxious when we are sitting there about to watch a sporting event of that magnitude, and with a build-up like we have for Tony and Khabib, I just can't wait to get to April, boys. I really can't.
And I think for a lot of people, it's one of those things where they don't even know that the fight's going to happen. So they're like, when I'm there, when I'm in the arena, when I'm watching on TV, when they're about to step in the octagon, that's when I'll believe that it's happening. But I think the thing with Tony is when you see Tony stare downs with Khabib, usually Khabib, he's a very intimidating guy. He's got that Mike Tyson thing about him where a lot of opponents sort of get beat before they get into that octagon. They know what they're stepping up against. Tony doesn't look like he's afraid of Khabib. Tony looks like he knows he's the man to beat Khabib. When you look at this matchup, I mean, this early on, do you think Tony could be the guy that gets it done? Do you think Tony could be the guy that beats him?
Absolutely. I mean, these are two of the greatest lightweights of all time, right? Were it not for the existence of Khabib Nurmagomedov and a circumstance here or there, we could be talking about the Tony Ferguson era with 16 consecutive lightweight wins. You know, this is the guy, Ferguson, who was the first man in UFC history at lightweight to win double digits, right? A 10-fight winning streak. Absolutely a tough matchup for everybody in this division, including Khabib. I haven't seen a betting line. I'd imagine it would be pretty close. I mean, Gregor Gillespie would be the first to tell you Ferguson and not Khabib is the toughest matchup for him in this division because, man, when he just gets going, it is just caution flammable. I mean, it feels like you're in there with a man who's on fire, you know? I mean, it's just all limbs from all directions and defense to offense and offense to defense. It's hard to call, quite frankly, because you're just in astonishment of what's unfolding in front of your eyes. And, you know, obviously for both of these men, their training regimens and habits are the stuff of legend. I just can't wait to see it. I think it's a very close fight. I truly think it's a coin flip. I know the Vegas odds won't be that tight, but with respect to Khabib's body of work, I think it's absolutely a pick 'em for me.
For sure. I love these fights where it's just two of the best in the division. There's a few that to me stand out, like Rockhold Weidman, that first one.
Yeah.
It was just like two guys you can't see losing. Whitaker and Adesanya was a more recent one, and now we've got Tony and Khabib obviously at lightweight. I'm wondering, though, if Tony does win, do you think that speeds up Conor McGregor's return to lightweight potentially? Because obviously if Khabib retains, we know he's going to take time off for Ramadan, and then he won't return until later in the year. Tony, depending on what he wants, maybe he wants to be more active, and you got to think he'd jump at the opportunity to fight McGregor. Do you think this would speed up McGregor's return to 55 and bypass maybe some of the fights in between?
Yeah, quite possibly. You know, obviously it's 3 months to the day, right? One fight to the other if you're talking about Tony and Khabib and Conor and Donald Cerrone. So, yeah, I think that result might change things. But, again, if you subscribe to my line of thinking, and a lot of people think I'm crazy, right? Ray Longo just doesn't see this at all. He thinks that Conor is coming back for the payday and feels like his legacy's entrenched as that two-division champion and doesn't feel like Conor cares about that part of things. The fact that Conor, to your point, comes out and sort of has an outline and a timeline for the year, I think is very encouraging if you're a mixed martial arts fan that wants him around, because he's thinking about these things, right? He's not sitting around, you know, measuring proper 12 shots. You know, he's thinking about what he can actually accomplish in MMA in a relatively short amount of time. So I think that he's a man of his word. He certainly has been that in the UFC, and I am cautiously optimistic that we'll see him 2.5 times in 2020.
Yeah, well, look, we really appreciate the time, John. Before we let you go, just quickly, and we want to quickly get your thoughts on this Covington-Usman matchup because it's huge. But locally here, Alex Volkanovski's taken on Max Holloway, and I don't really think that people outside of Australia and New Zealand really know how good Volkanovski really is, but he's just an absolute killer. And most of his UFC fights have been with serious injuries that people just didn't know that he had. So,
Right.
Presumably going into this fight against Max Holloway healthy and being a guy that prefers to fight long guys like Max, do you think Alex could be the guy that puts the spoiler on the division and becomes the champion?
Absolutely. It's the fight at featherweight that I've wanted to see for 18 months now with respect to Brian Ortega and certainly Jose Aldo and everybody else. When you brought up Weidman Rockhold in terms of the true number one versus number two, the first thing I thought of was Volkanovski against Max Holloway, right? I mean, look at what Alexander Volkanovski has been able to accomplish, right? Leaving guys like Mendez and Aldo in his wake and the way he's been able to do it, and not to mention some of the adversity that he's experienced along the way. I do think a lot of it comes down to Volko's health and his travel and everything else. He's had some awfully difficult circumstances that we don't need to go too far into right here, but live underdog for sure. And I say that with all due respect to the incumbent and the champion Max Holloway, who certainly has the length and a lot of different physical advantages that he'll try to take advantage of. But absolutely Volkanovski can get the job done. You know, I just love his confidence. You feel like you're around a champion, you know, and I know a lot of Aussies and Kiwis, you know, maybe overuse the word legend a little bit, right? And I love it. And I you know, I'm practicing my how you going?
Nice.
But in terms of the word legend, every time I see Volko, I can't help it. It's just the first word out of my mouth. So certainly he can stamp himself a legend if he's the guy at 45 to beat Max Holloway. And I certainly think, 11 days from now, he's got a great opportunity to do just that.
And I think depending on the outcome of the fight, there's a really good chance these guys are going to fight multiple times. Even if Max is able to retain, you could see Volko sort of, working his way back up and, maybe there being a rematch. We'll let you go in a moment, John. Don't want to be too greedy with your time, but I'm just wondering, UFC 245 just around the corner, Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman. It's a huge fight. I know there's other big ones in the division, but this is a big one, and I think stylistically it's pretty fascinating. People see these guys as very, very similar in terms of styles, but obviously one guy's going to get the advantage. Who do you see winning in this one, between the wrestling, the cardio, even their striking is sort of somewhat comparable. How do you see this one going?
It is truly a fascinating matchup, and I think a lot of those questions we kind of got to wait to get answers on, at least in terms of the cardio, right? What Colby Covington did against Robbie Lawler in New Jersey got all of the MMA royalty, Daniel Cormier, Kenny Florian, all of them to the Twitter button to be like, holy shit, I have never seen offensive output like that, mixing takedowns and striking. And, of course, statistically, the numbers were absolutely off the charts. And then that goes up against what Kamaru Usman was able to do against Tyron Woodley, as dominating a championship performance by a challenging underdog as any in recent history. So for me, it's a really hard one to handicap. I would think for Vegas it would be a little bit closer. I know Kamaru Usman is the favorite right now, but just two guys who have motors for days, have all the motivation in the world to beat the other. A lot of people feel like maybe Covington has the striking advantage based upon his last outing, and I guess if I had to give a striking edge, maybe a slight lean that way, but not to discredit all of the Henry Hooft repetitions, of course, for Kamaru Usman. But absolutely fascinating fight. I think what's great about 245, honestly, and you guys know the sport as well as anyone, you got 3 title fights that truly could go either way, and that is not promotional hyperbole. As a fan, that is the way I feel, and that gets me out of my seat, that gets me out of bed, and the countdown is on. We just got to get through DC, and it's off to Vegas.
Oh, for sure. And then you got Aldo, you got Uriah Faber. It's all happening on that card. Mike Perry. Yeah. I can't wait to hear you call it, John. He is an absolute legend. Follow the man at Jon Anik. How you doing, John? Thank you so much.
How you going?
And most importantly, star of the Warrior movie, the Submission Radio favorite, John. I think it goes to say that you have had an amazing 2019, partly why we wanted to have you on the show, to congratulate you on another fantastic year. And thank you for all the great commentary. Can't wait for 2020. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much, and thanks to your listeners and your viewers, and congrats to you guys as well, continuing to just grind it out and obviously making a lot of progress as well. Pleasure to talk to you boys, and I guess I'll see you for the big one January 18th, if not sooner.
You know what, man. See you next year, John. Thank you.
Thank you, boys.
Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate it. Take care.
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest will take on Jon Jones for the light heavyweight title at UFC 247 in Houston. Undefeated in his career, he rides a 12-fight win streak into this title fight. The Devastator himself, Dominick Reyes, welcome for the first time to Submission Radio. How are you, man?
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm doing great.
Well, first off, this is exciting. Like Casper said, first appearance on the show for the first time. And before we get to this fight with Jon Jones, Dom, you've had a pretty great and unbelievable MMA journey. I mean, you debuted professionally just about 5 years ago. But before you wanted to be in MMA, we understand your real dream was to be in the NFL. Now, break it down for us. Break it down for us, because we're here in Australia. We've got a lot of people who listen in Australia, New Zealand, of course, a lot of great fans in America, Canada, and in Europe. But what was the dream team and what was the dream position that you wanted to play when you were a kid and you had this dream of being in the NFL?
So my dream team to play for was the Cowboys, because it's my dad's favorite team. Not because it's mine, but because it's my dad's, and we always want to make our parents proud. And dream position's always been safety.
So talk to us about that. Like, what exactly happened with sort of the NFL dream, and how did that sort of, I guess, cut short and then transition over to MMA?
So, I spent my whole life playing American football. I got a full scholarship to play football in New York. I balled out. I started for 4 years. I was an all-time leading tackler in my university. Used to just kill people. That was my favorite thing. I just loved hitting people. And after it was all done, I tried out for the NFL. Went to the NFL Combine, did my thing, put up some pretty good numbers, but apparently wasn't good enough. So I didn't even get a tryout. You know, it was frustrating. You know, being 6'4" and having all the abilities that I have, like that. Like I'm definitely a black belt in football.
Yeah.
Black belt in football. So it's like the one thing I really, really knew like extremely well. But it didn't work out, and I was a little bit frustrated. I was depressed. You know, your lifelong dream, and you can't even. They didn't even give me a chance to even like see if I was good enough or not. You know, and it's frustrating. But I had two choices. I could have just got a job and worked behind the desk doing IT, or I could have started training MMA, which I did, and I fell in love immediately. Like my body style is perfectly built for fighting. It's good for football, but it's even better for fighting. And it's way better because if I do well, then I win. If I don't, in football, if I do well or don't do well, we can still. In MMA, it's all up to me, and that's how I like it. You know, I like to be in control of my own destiny. Like, who doesn't want to control their own destiny? You know. And yeah, so it didn't work out. Started training MMA, had a lot of fire in my heart, and I fell in love, man. I fell in love.
It's crazy. Like, how hard was it for you to sort of put one dream aside and then basically start another dream almost out of thin air, right? Like, you would have been how old at the time, and you would have just said, all right, like, I need a new dream, and then you kind of created one, and then now you're fighting for the title, right?
Yeah, I was 23
when
that happened. Graduated college, and I didn't even know how to punch properly, and now I'm arguably one of the most devastating strikers in the UFC right now. So, I mean, it's crazy what we're capable of and what we can do if we put our minds to it and truly believe. I mean, there is no limit.
You know, it's funny because even in 2014, when you started MMA, it wasn't as big as it is now. Now it's on ESPN, and we imagine there's a lot of kids in your position now dreaming to fight in the UFC like you once dreamt to play in the NFL. But I mean, how does it compare to you that, your original dreams were being on ESPN and playing football, and now you're going to be on ESPN and you're going to be sort of playing for the championships of championships because you'll be fighting for the title. In a lot of ways, it's similar in a lot of ways.
It's very similar, but it's better. It's way better. It's because it's my show. This is my show now. So the dream has come true. I'm literally every single day is like I'm living a dream. I'm making my dreams happen, and it's cool because it all just came from hard work. All I did was work extremely hard and made no excuses. No, there's never been an excuse. If I don't train, it's on me, not anybody else. Not on my car broke down. Mm-hmm. So there's an amount of accountability that got me to where I am today, and man, I'm on ESPN, man.
Yeah. I imagine there's a lot of sort of vindication here because obviously your road to the title hasn't been the easiest one. Your last 4 wins have been over guys like, Jared Cannonier, OSP, Volkan Ozdemir, and of course the former champion himself, Chris Weidman. But apart from fighting super tough guys, you also had to sort of deal with people kind of overlooking you, in the division for a while and you really having to sort of prove yourself. How was that to deal with, you sort of climbing the ranks and sort of, it almost felt like you were proving people wrong, every time you fought?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that statement. I mean, it's kind of been like fighting for respect in a sense throughout my career. I mean, nobody's really ever known who I was, even when I got before the UFC, because even my rise in the regional scene was fast. So people couldn't figure out who I was or anything really about me. So I get in the UFC and it's still the same thing. People are like, I'm not affiliated with any like big gyms. I'm not affiliated with any big names. It's just me, and people are like, who's this guy? And I just go out there and show them who I am. Really, it's kind of been like me showing the UFC and the world who I am every fight. I guess that's why we're called mixed martial artists, because I get to put my art out there on the canvas, and the world will make their decision on my style. And so far, so good.
No, absolutely. I'm just wondering, just on Casper's question, you beat a tough guy, and then people go, oh, yeah, Dominick Reyes is all right, but he shouldn't get the title shot. You beat another tough guy, and they go, yeah, he's all right, but this other guy should get a title shot. You give me another tough guy. Was there a part of you where, like, after one of those wins over one of those tough guys, you just wanted to kind of grab people and say, like, hey, I'm here. Like, I'm the best. I'm the best in the division. Why aren't you paying the attention to me? I mean, for a lot of people, they think, all right, after I beat this guy, surely everyone's going to give me the credit I deserve. But it took a while for you to get there.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with, I end fights kind of early in the first round, so people don't really get to see a lot of me. And then my Volkan fight wasn't my best performance. It was actually the biggest growing fight I've ever had. I learned the most from that. And I don't know, people are fickle, man. This is 2020 time. Like, people, it's about what have you done for me lately, and it's the most spectacular thing out there right now, and I don't know. I did get frustrated after the Volkan fight, though, when they said I needed to fight Chris. I was like, all right. That's why I posted the thing on Twitter of, if you guys want me to take Chris's head, then I'll be more than happy. Like, because I was frustrated because I kind of felt like I was next at that point too, but they made me earn it again. So I did what I did, and here I am.
Just sort of on that fight, did you feel like they were trying to set up Chris for the next title shot? Because I think even Jon Jones sort of spoke about it, and those seem to be kind of like the plans. It must have been a weird position for you to be in, like, people getting behind Chris, and then you're like, well, hang on a second, I got my own trajectory here. I'm the one trying to get the title.
Yeah, the whole time. I knew it. The whole time. I was like, all right, that's cool. Keep underestimating me. All right, that's fine. See what happens to your boy. Watch what happens to your boy, and then talk to me after the fight. That's how I felt about that one.
Do you think did it give you any extra motivation? I mean, Chris Weidman, former champion, big name. There's enough motivation there alone, but the UFC sort of obviously hoping you were going to lose that one so Chris Weidman could fight Jon Jones. Was there a part of you with a bit of extra motivation to go out there and sort of put on an even bigger display, an even bigger statement than normal?
I knew I had to make a big statement. Like, even when I first agreed to the fight, like, I knew it was extremely risky. If I don't win, then where am I now? My ranking would have dropped significantly. Everything would have gone completely sideways. But I knew the stakes, and I knew what I was in for, and I knew what he brought to the table, and I knew I was better. So I agreed to the fight, and then as they started to hype up, Chris and John, the whole deal, I was like, all right, I see you guys. All right. Watch. It was like, watch this, and then you'll really know the truth. So, I mean, for me, it was just like a little more fire, like a little more, because nobody likes to be disrespected, especially fighters, especially myself. And when you feel like you're kind of being disrespected like that, it adds a little bit more.
I think we're learning that Dominick Reyes, ladies and gentlemen, is a good man. Just a lot of really good responses where I would have just been like, what did they say? I can't believe they said that. You just channeled it to your fights and to great performances. I'm wondering, though, Dominic, at some points, were you frustrated with the UFC? It just didn't feel like the UFC really pushed you like they should have at certain points in your career. Like, they'd give guys big pushes, big runs, promo time, ad space. They'd really push certain guys, and you're one of the guys they didn't really push as much. Did that ever frustrate you? What was your relationship like with them at those points?
Actually, so I was aware of the push. Like, they tried to push like 3 guys before me, right? They tried to push Tyson, Tyson Pedro. They tried to push Khalil. They tried to push Johnny and others. You know, all those that came before me, before I got in the UFC, they did try to push him, and they all got beat. They all got beat. For me, it was just about winning fights. I knew if I win fights, it wouldn't matter. It's like, I give a shit about your push. If I win, you have no choice. No choice but to give me what I want. And that's really like how MMA works. Well, in my mind, how I feel like it works, it's the ultimate, you're in control of your own destiny. So if I win fights, then I get what I want, regardless of whether they want to give it to me or not. I earned it. It's about earning it, you know, earning everything. And I was cool with flying under the radar. I'm a low-key guy as it is, man. Like, I'm pretty, like, hometown, kind of just chilling, not really getting into like really much at all. But yeah, I'm low-key, so it worked out. And I know what I am as far as a fighter. So I knew it would be inevitable anyway. So just gave me more time to not be famous.
Well, while we're on it, just quickly, what do you make of Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman, and Jacare all sort of attempting to move up to light heavyweight and all failing in their debuts?
It's the grass is greener on the other side until you step on some shit.
I love that saying. I always think it's funny because you've now got that classic saying, and also I always think back to Anthony Smith when, you know, like obviously him and Thiago Santos were having good runs and that led to title shots, and you know a lot of the former champions were like, oh, we're gonna move up, and then Anthony Smith's like, it's not that fucking easy. And then as we're seeing, you know, guys like yourself are sort of beating some of these middleweights. Was that a big deal for you? I mean, beating a guy like Chris Weidman. I know this was kind of a fight that you felt like you didn't really need to prove yourself, but in a sense, you know, was that a big scalp, sort of beating a former world champion and sort of adding that guy to your mantle?
Yeah, so I mean, every fight is needed. It's all needed. It's you can't get to where you want to be and who you want to be without going through the fights that you don't think you need. So it was very, very huge, man. I got to beat a former world champion, the guy who beat Anderson Silva, like, so sick. And he's from Long Island, where I went to college. He went to my rival college. So it was perfect. I was like, this dude trying to step with the big boys against a rival competition. Like, come on, man. Couldn't have asked for a better guy.
Well, I was going to say,
I feel like those guys, the other guys that went up, it was just good timing. I think it was really good timing. Like Smith and Thiago. Smith fought some older light heavyweights, you know, and he didn't, like, his first fight at light heavyweight wasn't against like a legit contender. Like Thiago fought Jan, which is a legit contender, and he earned it, you know, after he fought Kevin Holland and those guys at light heavyweight, or no, Eric Anders. So I think it was just a timing thing where they got comfortable at light heavyweight. So like Anders is an 85er, but he fought Thiago at 205. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't really a 205er, but he, you know, so it got to boost Thiago's confidence. Just like with Smith, he fought Kula, I think, in his debut, and he's aging, man. It is what it is, you know. Father time always wins. Mother, you know, that's how it goes. So I think it was just a little bit of timing, and then like the guys that are coming up now are fighting legit contenders. So you fight a legit light heavyweight, it's a lot different than an aging light heavyweight or, you know, a middleweight that's fighting a light heavyweight for one fight.
Well, I'll tell you what, we are super excited for this Jon Jones fight. Let's get into it because we know this is a man that you've had your eye on for quite some time. Tell us, how much tape have you watched on Jon Jones? We've seen countless men try and countless men fail. What do you think is the key to beating Jon Jones before you step into that cage, UFC 247?
So, yeah, I mean, I've seen all the Jon Jones tape. And he's Jon Jones, man. He's extremely dynamic. He moves very well. He's smart, and he's athletic. I mean, sounds like we're talking about myself, but but that's the key, man. The key is to just be me. For me, it's F what he does, F what he's about, This is about me. If I don't show up the best version of me, then how am I even going to compete? You know? So for this fight, this camp, I mean, for the last fight, it was the same way too, but it doesn't matter. We know what he does. We know his tell. He has a few tells here and there, but he adapts to every fight just like I do. So go out there, make him a little uncomfortable, make him make quick decisions and beat him. Just beat him. Be the best version of me. A lot of guys get too caught up in what he's going to do. I don't care what he's going to do anymore at all.
I guess what's fascinating is, Jon Jones throughout his career has faced so many different specialists, so many different well-rounded guys. And, obviously those guys haven't been, no one's been able to beat him yet. So people always say, you hear fighters say, like, he's never faced anybody like me. So if you look at yourself, what would you say is sort of one big key thing that, you bring to the table that Jon Jones may have, never experienced so far?
So he's never experienced an athlete of my, caliber. He's never fought an athlete like me. He's fought average athletes and some pretty good athletes. I would say they're pretty good, but not on my level, not on my explosiveness, not bringing the power I bring with the mind that I have attached to it. I could match him mentally. We match physically. He just has a longer reach. The place he beats me right now is experience and reach, and I don't care about experience because I've fought in many, many experienced guys, and that doesn't mean anything. It means zero on fight night. The only thing that matters is what's going on in front of you. So we'll see, man.
There's the young Jon Jones. Then there's the devastating Jon Jones who destroyed all the legends like Lyoto, Rampage, Rashad. And then there's the Jon Jones who people believe are slowing down a little bit. The guy that fought Thiago Santos, for example. I want to get your theory on this. Who is Jon Jones in 2020 when you fight him? Is he still as good as ever?
He's the best version of himself in 2020. I'm fighting the best version of Jon Jones in my mind. I'm not getting watered down or anything. I'm getting the best Jon Jones. In my career, the guys I've fought, I've gotten the best version of those guys. It just wasn't enough for them. And I think it's going to be the same thing.
It's going to be very interesting seeing this fight. I know that you mentioned that you expect there to be an immediate rematch. Is that right? How does that sort of weigh on your mind, expecting that, because Jon Jones has been so dominant, assuming you get the win, that you're basically going to have to beat this guy twice?
Oh, yeah. No, you can't just beat Jon Jones one time. Like, it's Jon Jones. He's been champion since almost like the whole length of the UFC light heavyweight division. He's been champion. He, like, regardless of, however the fight goes down or whatever, I win the fight. He deserves a rematch no matter what.
It's interesting because what Casper mentioned, you said in an interview with MMA Fighting, you said that you're going to grant him a rematch after you beat him, and it's going to be a Cowboy Stadium, which I know you mentioned to us at the start of the interview was your dream to play NFL at Cowboy Stadium. But you also said something in there that made me kind of wonder, and I want to get your take on this. You said it's not, after you beat him once, it's not going to be enough. What did you mean by that? Because that's a very interesting thing that you said there.
Well, it's just not going to be enough. Like, people. So you were saying it earlier in my career. I've not got the respect you feel I deserve and things like that. I beat Jon Jones, and all of a sudden, oh, it's a fluke. Yeah, oh no. Just like always, it's a reality. It's just not going to be enough. You can't just beat Jon Jones one time. You have to beat him.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, you're not a trash talker, but Jon Jones, it's like he's not a massive trash talker like a Chael Sonnen, but he's an experienced talker where he's calculated, he's smart. He gets into his opponent's head during fight week. He kind of like lures you into being friends with him, but then he'll throw comments at you, and people kind of get disgruntled by it. Like he wants you to like him so that he can get to you. And you've put out this comment about how you're going to beat him and you're already going to grant him a rematch. In your mind, does that already sort of start that mental warfare? You saying that, hey, like I'm ready for this fight week that's going to be going down with you trying to get into my head?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, his trash talk is brother trash talk. I have brothers. He has brothers. It's, when you have a bunch of brothers and you guys are always around and it's constant competition, it's just little jabs. It's little shots, just little shots at their biggest insecurity is just to mess with them and get them mad. And then they do something. You're like, Mom, it's the same thing. It's a little kid. It's the same. It's the exact same, trash talking. It's kind of childish, but it is what it is. Like, I just think it's funny, man, because I don't care. I don't care what this guy says to me. I don't care at all what he says to me. Like, bro, you can say whatever you want. Say whatever you want. It's not going to help you. It's not going to save you. It's not going to make me not want to knock you out. It's not going to make me try to knock you out more. Like, I'm not dumb. I'm not just going to run, and then catch. Like, come on, man. I thought we were professionals. Let's go.
I know the storyline, or one of the storylines here is, you not yet getting the respect you deserve and people maybe overlooking you. Do you think Jon Jones is overlooking you? Do you think he's giving you the respect that you deserve, based on some of the things that he's said in the past or leading into the build-up of this fight?
I think he is. I think he's treating me with a lot of respect. I think he knows how dangerous I am. I think he knows he's not taking this fight lightly, man. He's not. Even no matter what he says, I'm one of his most dangerous opponents in a while. Thiago was pretty dangerous, and Thiago went out there and fought, but he didn't have nearly the reach that I have. So I think this is going to be very similar to the Gus Jones one.
We're gonna let you go in just a minute, Dominic, and we appreciate your time. But just quickly, before this fight came together with yourself, it looked like Jon Jones was basically trying to fight anybody else. He was on Twitter calling out guys like Anthony Johnson. He was on Twitter talking about fighting Israel Adesanya. Just quickly, what do you make of this whole Israel Adesanya thing that between Jon and Adesanya, and Jon really wanting to fight Israel?
It's Jones reaching for publicity, reaching for relevance. That's all that was. It's just, I want to be cool. That's Jones. Hey guys, I'm cool too. Let me fight Israel. I could beat Israel. I know he's a weight class below me, but I'm cool. He just want to be relevant, man. I don't know.
But before we let you go and obviously get a prediction for your fight, would you give Israel much of a chance against a guy like Jon Jones? Obviously, Jon Jones being a bigger, heavier guy, but Israel being on a massive tear and a champion in his own right.
Hey, Israel's a beast. I mean, he's got a shot against anyone in the world. I mean, I give him a shot, but it won't be for the belt.
Well, I was going to say it may be Dominick Reyes versus Israel Adesanya Casper down the line if everything goes to plan at UFC 247 and then at Cowboy Stadium, of course. But for now, the stage is set. We know you've always imagined being in the NFL when you were younger. Now you're in the UFC. You'll be on ESPN, but instead of throwing a football and playing for a championship, you'll be fighting for one. So tell us, as we wrap up, how do you see it happening against Jon Jones, UFC 247? Is there a thing going on in your mind, a sequence, anything, a prediction that you think is going to go down when you get in the octagon with him?
I'm just going to call it a ESPN instant classic. That's what we're looking at.
Oh, there you go, guys. The instant classic goes down at UFC 247. Watch Dominick Reyes take on Jon Jones for the UFC light heavyweight belt. And, of course, follow him on Twitter at Dom Reyes and Instagram at Dom Reyes24. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Dominic, and good luck on the fight.
Thank you, guys. Have a nice day.
Hey, this is Ariel Helwani, and you're listening to Submission Radio with my two favorite mates, Dennis and Casper.
All right, guys. Our next guest is set to return this weekend against Alberto Rodriguez when Combate Americas puts on their first ever pay-per-view event. He is a legend and an icon of MMA, a true pioneer, a former UFC champion, and of course the Huntington Beach bad boy himself, Tito Ortiz, who, by the way, has been doing a crazy amount of media today, is kind enough to give us his time. Return to Submission Radio. Tito, thank you so much, man. How are you today?
Doing great, man. You're very welcome. anything for all my Australian fans, man. I appreciate it for sure.
Well, I have to say again, you are really going out on a limb. You've got a fight this weekend, and you've given us this quick time to speak to us. I think all the fans knew you were a good guy, a people's champion, but it just shows why you mean so much to the fans. So tell us, you're fighting Alberto Rodriguez this weekend. How are you feeling? It's fight week. You're doing these 12-hour media days. We see you pop up everywhere. How are you finding time to train for this one?
Well, that last night I got a good session. Last night we did 5 rounds last night. Today I'm actually going to take a nap after I get done here. I'm going to take about a 3-hour nap and then get to the gym. Probably do about anywhere 4 to 5 rounds. I'm in shape though, man. I've been going now for 19 weeks, so this is kind of a tune-down week for me. So it helps. I'm only weighing like 222 right now, so my weight's right where I want it to be. I only have to make 210, which I'm very thankful that I don't have to make 205. But I'm ready, man. I've been working really, really hard over the last 19 weeks, and my body's just it's perfectly in fighting shape. I just doing all this PR in New York right now. I guess it's a blessing in disguise, but I've been at it. I've been nonstop all day today. I've been going since 7 this morning, New York time. So that's actually 4 a.m. California time for me. But
jeez,
I said the same thing yesterday. I started at 6 a.m. yesterday, and I worked until 5 p.m. So we're going back-to-back days. But I'm able to get it in, man. I'll get a few hours nap and then go train at the Renzo Gracie Academy here in New York, and it gives an open mat for me. So I'm very thankful, man, that I'm able to get some work in. And like I say, just working on my timing, working on my boxing and my wrestling and a little bit of ground and pound stuff, but just more technique stuff. Keeping my weight down has always been easy because I've always been dedicated to the fight game and been very, very responsible on my weight. And I don't need a health guy showing me what I need to eat or so forth. I understood what I need to eat to make the weight. So you got to understand, 205 was made for me. I'm the one who made 205. So 210 is actually a 5-pound allowance, and I'm very, very thankful to have.
There you go. Well, yeah, we were at Renzo's when we were in New York recently. Obviously, the great Jon Danaher there. So you picked a good spot to get your camp in, sort of towards the end of it. I'm wondering, just to sort of paint the picture for this fight, this story, obviously build the narrative. I feel like every time we speak to you, you're preparing for your final fight, and here you are fighting again. So how exactly did this fight come about? What is it that brought you out of retirement? And I guess what was sort of the incentive for you to fight a guy like Alberto Rodriguez?
Well, I think all you guys can blame it on Chuck Liddell calling me out and saying he wanted to kick my butt and embarrass me, and that I was too afraid to fight him, and then I wouldn't show up to the fight. And I was like, man, this guy will not shut up. Jeez. All right, fine. You want me to come out of retirement? I came out of retirement, took on Chuck Liddell. UFC backed it. They said, you guys should do a face-off here at the Hall of Fame. This was last year. And, we fought for Golden Boy promotion, and I stopped him in the first round. I made him look old, and people say, yeah, he was old. Yeah, people, I'm old too. I'm 44 years old. But it just, I'm a different animal now, man. I'm healthy. I'm in shape. I put it in an 18-week camp for the Chuck Liddell fight, and the fight was over, and I didn't feel like I was done. I didn't feel like it was over for me. So I called Randy Couture, and Randy's a close friend of mine. I go, Randy, when you were 43, what made you come back and win the heavyweight world title? He's like, Tito, man, I didn't feel like I was done. I didn't feel like it was time for me to hang him up. And after I fought Chael Sonnen and I had to get 3 disc replacements in my neck, I thought I was done, but Chuck pulled me out of the retirement, and I really just I felt like I can get in the gym and train. And when I did, it was no more pain, no more neck pain, no more back pain. I was just like, wow, this is what it feels like to train with no pain. I like this. And then I get the win. I knock out Chuck Liddell in the first round. I'm all, I like this even more. And then all of a sudden, I was reaching out to Bellator, and I reached out to a couple of other organizations, and Combate Americas said, can we have a meeting with you? Because they knew I was thinking about fighting again. And they said, well, we have a guy for you. We want to bring you on as ambassador of our company. And I was like, okay, I like this. And it was a deal I pretty much couldn't refuse. And they said, and here's another one too. Alberto Del Rio wants to fight you. I go, Alberto Del Rio, the WWE wrestler, the heavyweight champion? And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, am I getting set up here? Hold on a second.
Huh.
Actually, before I said yes to anything, I had to go look him up. I had to look him up and make sure that we're talking about the same guy. And I looked up his mixed martial art record of being 9-5, and he fought in Pride, and he fought a lot of wrestlers that he beat. But he fought Mirko Kokop, and he got kicked in the head, and everybody gets kicked in the head by Mirko Kokop. So I know that just wasn't something I can base my decision on. So I had to kind of do a little more research. And, you know, I said, you know what, if he wants to fight me and you guys want to pay me the money that you're paying me, let's have some fun. Let's do this. Let's do this for fun. And, you know, I remember TMZ coming up to me after I got off an airplane, and they asked me if I'd come back and fight. I go, you know, I'd only come back and fight if it was going to be fun. And this is a fun fight, and I'm excited. And Alberto really pushed me to everything I wanted to do in the camp. You know, it's been a 19-week camp. I've gone through hell with sparring and running and biking and weight training and wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I mean, everything I've done for all my camps, I've been able to do this one, both. This time with no injuries. And I'm very, very lucky, man. I've trained smart, and I've done it the right way, and it's kept me hungry, and it's kept me motivated. And, you know, I'm 4 days away from the fight right now, and I'm ready for war, man. I'm ready to go in and put on a show for all my fans and put another battle down on the books.
There's a few things to unpack there, Tito, but I'm just wondering, I heard you talking in other interviews, and you said that when you were shopping this fight around, or your return around, you did approach the UFC. I'm just wondering what their response was, and what were those conversations like, because, you know, it would have been crazy to see you, you know, back in the UFC. I think something that a lot of people would have not only been excited for, but kind of, it would have been kind of shocking, right? Tito Ortiz finally returned to the UFC after all these years.
Well, you know, I think them being bought by a new company, William Morris, those guys are really great. Hunter is a really good guy. He's an awesome guy. He did really well with Chris Cyborg. It's just too bad it turned out the way it did. Dana's still there, so, you know, we have disagreements towards each other. I really just have gone on with my career. As far as Dana, I thought we were cool, but then all of a sudden when the Chuck Liddell fight went the way it went, and I told him too. I remember seeing him at XS the night we did the promotion for the Chuck Liddell fight, and I told him that I'm going to knock him out, and he's like, yeah, sure. And he didn't think so, but all of a sudden when the fight did happen and I did knock him out, he had all kinds of things to say, saying that the fight should have never happened, and that wasn't Chuck Liddell, and this and that. Just you know, assassinate my character by doing that. And I put in the hard work, man. I've been through hell. I've been fighting as long as Chuck Liddell been fighting. And I've had more surgeries than anybody else in mixed martial arts, but I'm still competing, and I love what I do. And, you know, it never got any further than just a conversation of me going to UFC. And it wasn't an idea. Like I say, Hunter is an awesome guy over there at UFC, and Dana's still in charge over there, though. So, I wish me and Danny could get along, but it is what it is. And I'm happy where I am right now. And Combate America came out of nowhere with this, and I was really happy with what they offered me with the ambassadorship, and they respect me. And the dollar amount is what respect is shown, and the way Campbell McLaren treats me. It is just amazing that life comes full circle the way it does. And I'm pretty blessed.
And of course, we saw the 30 for 30, which a lot of people felt like was a bit biased and didn't really sort of represent. Yeah, can you believe it? And,
go figure, huh?
Yeah, can you believe
it? I wonder how that worked with it having 19 edits from what the true cut was. You know, it was supposed to be a fair thing, and then that's what I was sold on when Micah Brown was shooting it with me. You know, they were with us for almost 3 months. And they said it was going to be fair. It was going to be right down the middle. They're going to tell the story how it truly should be. And it ended up not doing that way. It ended up being totally opposite of what I expected. Because if it was going to be the way they shot it and how it was shown, I would have never did it. And it was supposed to be something that was true. You know, Chuck Liddell said some things. He got yelled out by Dana because the truth was said. And a lot of other fighters were saying the truth. And it never got told. And it was
so
sad,
Dana
but,
got annoyed at Chuck for telling the truth.
Yeah. Chuck got some words from Dana, which was funny, and no one really knows about that one besides me. And Chuck, Dana.
What
But,
was it about? What was it that Chuck said that Dana didn't like sort of getting out?
Everything I've been saying.
Huh.
Everything I've been saying this whole time. It all comes full circle. I'm telling you, man, the truth will set you free. And it didn't make it. It went on the chopping block and went through 19 edits, and they got what they did. And as you can tell, it didn't get promoted. They didn't do anything to promote it at all. They just pretty much just showed it dry run, and it was just too bad because it lost their integrity of not the whole film. To a certain extent, it did, but it just kind of made Chuck a superstar that he is. And I ain't taking nothing away from him. He is a superstar, and it just showed me as a champ. Then all of a sudden, champ that I lost, and I was afraid to fight Chuck, and it was completely biased. But I mean, this is my opinion, and this is the way I seen it. And a lot of my fans and friends seen it, and they're like, "Tito, we know the truth. Don't worry about it." And I can take it as that. I can take it as a grain of salt, and it is what it is. I'm still competing. I'm still having fun. I'm still signing 7-figure contracts, and I'm cool with it. I'm happy.
Yeah, well, because I was going to say, it didn't really mention the fact that, you went on, you were a star outside of the UFC. You made the UFC, then you went into the Bellator run. You were a star there. Now you're in Combate, and you're a star there. But it kind of looked like Dana really wanted to kind of talk about Golden Boy Promotions and why Oscar De La Hoya was such a bad promoter. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what was it like working with Oscar De La Hoya compared to working with Dana White? I mean, we've heard some negative things about the way that he handled this MMA event. Was there any sort of negativity from working with Oscar De La Hoya? Were you disappointed at all at the end?
I was disappointed on a lot of things. I always had a lot of questions, but I trusted a couple people on my team about some of the decisions that were made. De La Hoya had zero to do with anything besides showing up to the weigh-ins and not remembering the fighters' names or not even knowing the fighters' names. It was Golden Boy Promotions saying that they did all these pay-per-views, but come to find out they'd never done a pay-per-view ever before. HBO always did the pay-per-views. But they like to say they gave me an opportunity. I'm thankful for De La Hoya coming out of his pocket to, give up $500,000 between me and Chuck, and we got to split it down the middle, and that was pretty much it. I got an opportunity to beat Chuck for $250,000 and had to pay half of that going to taxes, and I got let down. I got let down completely. It was one of those things that I thought that we'd make a huge amount of money, and we didn't. But I got my hand raised. I got an opportunity to continue to fight because it brought me out of retirement. So it was a blessing in disguise, and I'm very thankful for it. I'm thankful for De La Hoya giving me the opportunity, but I come to realize they don't know how to run a pay-per-view at all. Hence, that was their first pay-per-view they ever did. I did pretty much zero promotion. The only promotion I did was a promotion that I did on my social media, what Chuck did on his social media, and probably about 5 or 6 outlets that they provided, and one press conference in Vegas the same time as the Canelo fight. They dropped the ball on a lot of things, and you can't really blame them because they never did a pay-per-view before. So, but I mean, I was thankful for them giving me the opportunity that they did. And right now, Combate has done leaps over bounds beyond, far beyond what De La Hoya had ever done. I mean, they're almost doing better than what UFC ever did doing promotion. I mean, just today, I hit, 6 different huge news stations. We did Fox and Friends.
Submission Radio.
We've I've been going nonstop for the last 2 days. I think I hit at least 25 different news stations. It's just been amazing. It's been great. So the PR team that Combate Americas has hired is amazing. They're doing a great job, and I'm very, very thankful because I'm being used the right way, and we're selling this pay-per-view the right way. And I guess I feel bad for one person, and that's Alberto Rodriguez, because he's being sacrificed to the Lions.
Mm-hmm. We want to talk about this fight just quickly. What do you make of Dana White and Oscar De La Hoya talking about fighting each other and, I'll beat his butt, I'll beat that butt, And by the way, Oscar De La Hoya, one of the greatest boxers of all time. Do you laugh when you see that? When Dana and him go back and forth?
That's just like Dana saying he wanted to fight me. Come on, man. Come on. Yeah, you know what? I'll let those guys brawl it out. I'll let those guys talk about each other. And my life, life's too short to be negative. Life's too short to hate. And I'm going to continue what I'm doing. I'm very satisfied where I am right now. I'm happy. I'm working this business. I'm busting my ass. I'm living the American dream, and I'm very, very lucky. And what Dana and Oscar have against each other is between them two, and I'm out of the business. I'm away from both of them. So I'm good. I'm away from them completely.
Well, the interesting thing about this fight is you've decided to put your UFC belt sort of on the line, and that's an important piece of hardware, not only in sort of MMA history, but also your career. So that's on the line. What does it mean for you to put that belt up, something that I imagine you cherish quite a lot? And also, what would you do with his WWE title, assuming you go in and get the job done this weekend?
That's what excites me. That's why I put it in a 19-week camp, to have a WWE Heavyweight Championship belt. And I beat the guy who won one. People don't. I guess people don't get it if they're not big fans like me of WWE, because I've always been a huge WWE fan as a kid, even through my career. I could name so many WWE wrestlers that I've looked up to that I've taken little small pieces of their career and added them to mine. From Hulk Hogan to Stone Cold Steve Austin to Wayne Johnson. So many guys that I've watched through my career. I was willing to sacrifice one of my titles, and it just makes me that much more hungry. It feels like a world championship fight. It feels like I'm fighting for my title. I'm fighting for my name. I'm fighting for my legacy. And against Alberto Del Rio, him being a heavyweight WWE world champion, I'm excited, man. I want to put on a show. I want to make it exciting for the fans to watch. I want to, ground and pound is coming for sure. I'm going to stand on my feet. I'm going to bang. I'm going to defend the takedown. I'm going to punish this guy. I'm going to punish him in the first round. I'm going to take him, let's see if he can make it to the second round. I don't think he will. I said that I would donate $50,000 to a charity if he made it to the second round, just to make it interesting. But I'm going to push the tempo. I'm going to push it fast, and I'm going to try to look for a fast knockout. If it doesn't happen, I'm going to grind it out, and I'm going to hurt him, man. I'm going to put some damage on him. I'm going to look for blood, that's for sure.
It's fascinating seeing you guys, yourself and Alberto, because it seems like you're in very different parts in life. You've sort of, I feel like your life is the best it's ever been. You're doing this because you want to. And he's spoken about how he had some legal issues and sort of Combate helped him out. And now he wants to kind of repay them and almost, show them loyalty and do them a favor in a sense and get back in. And I feel like he's trying to sort of, in a way, rebuild his life. What do you think about his motivation for his fight? Do you think he's doing the fight for the right reasons, in a sense, when you guys go in there and fight?
I think he's doing it for the right reasons. He started his camp at the beginning of the year. Before this fight was even talked about or even signed, he was already training. And people don't know that. He was already training. He was already getting ready for this fight. So when I started my camp back in July, I missed out on a whole summer. I missed out on a whole fall. We're already now we're in wintertime. I've been training that long, and he's been training that long. So I expect to put on a great show, and I expect he's going to put on a great show. It just shows that he's being loyal to the company. It shows that he wants to get paid, of course, but he thinks he could beat me. He says he could beat me. He wants that UFC light heavyweight title that I'm willing to put up for grabs. And on Saturday night, December 7th, want to walk away with both titles. And when I walk out with both my boys, as I did against Chelsono with Jacob, this time I'll be walking out with Jesse and Journey, and I'll be putting that title around their shoulders after I beat it from Alberto Del Rio.
I was going to say, if you get that WWE title, do the people on SmackDown and Raw need to be put on notice? Will Tito Ortiz possibly be running out?
They better be put on notice. I'm putting
Brock Lesnar. Is Brock Lesnar in trouble? Set the record straight for us, Tito.
Brock Lesnar's in trouble. All those guys are in trouble because I win this title. I'm coming after their title, and it ain't gonna stop until then because I'm gonna live my dream as this American dream continues on. I will be the heavyweight champion of WWE. Also, just wait, give me time. It's gonna happen.
Dude, we can't wait. And speaking of the WWE, Cain Velasquez, we saw the plan for you is to fight again, and we see that Cain Velasquez might be a possibility for the future. What is going on? Is that actually happening?
You never know, man. It's just one of those things. If Cain can get down to 205, I'm in. Let's do this. I would love to do it. Cain is an awesome champion, heavyweight champion of UFC. He's a great fighter, and he hasn't fought in a while. And if that's the next opponent, then let it be. Right now, I haven't fought past about 10 p.m. on Saturday, December 7th, man, my hand being raised. I even thought about my after party. I ain't even thinking about an after party. All I thought about it too is getting my hand raised.
There you go. That explains why our invites haven't arrived in the mail, Tito. I'm just wondering, would it, and while we're talking hypotheticals, would this fight ever happen at heavyweight if it was you versus Cain Velasquez? Because he is a big guy, or is light heavyweight the only way that this would potentially happen?
I would do a catchweight at 210 for him. You got to understand, I fought my whole career at 205 pounds. A whole career since the beginning. I mean, 199 I used to make, and then all of a sudden we made it 205, and that's always been perfect. I mean, I walk around 220, 225. Just whenever I fight, making that 205 weight class makes me fast. It makes me know that I'm in shape. I'm not going to be lazy, and that's important. That's why I've always been a light heavyweight.
Tito, we don't want to be too greedy with your time, and we know you've given us plenty of it, so we'll let you go in a minute. Just quickly, obviously this massive fight recently got announced between Conor McGregor and Donald Cerrone, and we are asking all our guests, so we just wanted to get your thoughts on what are you expecting from Conor McGregor's big return as he finally comes back, which obviously for him an interesting narrative has been just the year that he's gone through, and people are all wondering, well, what is he going to look like when he comes back in the cage? I'm curious to get your thoughts.
Well, the guy made a lot of money. I mean, he really doesn't have no reason to come back. I don't know why he's coming back, unless he's making really dumb money with UFC, which he probably is. But Donald Cerrone's a tough guy. I love Donald Cerrone. He's a good dude. I really respect him. And I think this is time to shine. And I think he has a great chance of beating Conor. And it's at 170. Conor actually is a 155-pounder, truthfully. And 145 pounder, so 170 is a big jump up for him. But I don't know, did the time off help Conor? Sometimes when you get a little time off, it helps the body recover a little bit more. And Donald Cerrone's been in some battles his last couple of fights, so it's just one of those things. I just hope both the guys put on a great show, and I would like to see Cowboy Cerrone get his hand raised. But I would like to see Conor put on a good fight.
Well, that's interesting. So you're rooting for Cowboy in this one?
Yeah, I am. Just because of Conor punching that old man on the bar stool. That was not respectful, man. And the guy got charged like $1,000 or something shit like that. That is just baloney. That's karma's a bitch, and it always bites everybody in the ass at the end of the day, and it always comes around. And like I say, it ain't nothing that I don't like Conor. I like Conor. I think he's an amazing guy. I just think that that wasn't something you should do ever as a human being, not even just let alone a pro fighter, but just as a human being in general. You always respect your elders, and that's the right thing to do.
Well, I know that you've spoken in other interviews about how, the personal life is so important, how when that's going to plan, and, obviously your health right now is really good as well. That's something that can affect your whole fighting career, your performance and things like that. How important do you think it is that Conor's, all his demons, all the controversies are sort of put to the side when he steps in against Cerrone to make sure that everything behind the scenes is, I guess, kosher, so to speak?
Well, he's a big boy. Conor's a big man. He's worth over $100 million. The guy got some money. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know why he's fighting. He's fighting because fans keep saying, "What happened to Conor? What happened to Conor?" I mean, does he miss getting in the cage? Does he have to prove something to himself? I don't know. I couldn't really tell you. But at the end of the day, I just hope both the guys put on a great fight, and I hope Conor kind of wises up a little bit and smell the flowers. And got to understand, man, he's a father, and his kid is going to be looking up to him one day, going, "Dad, why did this happen? Why did that happen?" And being a parent is very, very important, and being a responsible parent is even more important. And being a present parent that's responsible, that's going to take care of the child and wife is number one, man. And like I said, I hope he gets his stuff together for his family, and I wish the best to him.
We want to get this prediction from you about this fight with Alberto, but just quickly, I saw that people are putting all these headlines about you, Tito, your comments on Jon Jones, and I saw you weren't too happy with some of these headlines. You thought they were a bit clickbaity, so just quick. Man. Yeah, well, that's why I'm bringing it up, man. I want to quickly just clear the record. Your thoughts on Jon Jones, nice and clear, just in case anybody's confused or read the wrong headline or sort of bought into something fake.
Okay, so question was, Tito Ortiz, how would you do against Jon Jones? I said, I think I could beat him. This is my opinion. Anybody's ever asked if to fight another opponent, do they think you could beat him? Or you can say, no, I'm going to lose to him. then you don't believe in yourself. You have no self-belief. I believe in myself. I'm healthy right now. I'm strong right now. I'm fast. I'm doing everything I did when I was champion. Why couldn't I think I could beat him? Jon Jones is the greatest? Yes. Is he the best? Yes. Could I beat him? Possibly. Could I lose to him? Probably. But I would give one hell of a run for his money. I'll tell you that for sure. And I just believe in the way I fight. The way I fight, that's the way I fight. I fight tough. I fight hard. I fight pressure. I try to bring the fight to the guy as I fight. I don't try to pick by points and win by decision. I try to finish guys. So, I mean, the factor of people saying, oh, Tito, you're an old man and this and that. Well, these are the guys that never trained before. These are the guys that never got in the gym and trained. You know, I remember a while back, there was a guy that said he's going to come back and win the heavyweight world title. He was 43 years old, and people doubted him. People said, oh, this is not going to happen. He's going to get smashed. And he ends up winning. And this man was Randy Couture. He came back and won the heavyweight world title at the age of 43. That's when people said he couldn't do it. And I remember another instance, too, in boxing. There was an old man that was 44 years old, and he fought a 21-year-old boxer that just shocked the world and got a knockout and ended up knocking this guy out. And his name was George Foreman at the age of 44 years old. He won the heavyweight world title. Anything's possible in this sport. And for the people that doubt themselves, that's what's happened to this country in the United States. People are getting soft. You got to stop being soft. You got to start thinking of your future and being tough. And I'm glad of Donald J. Trump, our president, is he's tough. And he's fighting for our country. And the same thing, we got to believe in ourselves at the end of the day. If you don't, you're just another wussy, man. And that's the way I think. That's the way my thought process always happens. Is I'm a tough son of a bitch, and I'm willing to fight any possible person as a light heavyweight. And if anybody asks me who I would fight and if I beat him, of course I'd beat him. That's why, because I believe in myself. And people should believe in themselves too.
Well, thank you for clearing it up. And as we wrap the prediction, you versus Alberto Rodriguez this weekend, Saturday, the 7th of December. It's Sunday, the 8th here in Australia and New Zealand. Combate Americas, Tito versus Alberto. Finish us off here, Tito. How's it going to look this weekend?
I'm going to run across the cage. I'm going to rip off his right arm, and I'm going to beat him down with his right arm. I'm going to rip off his left arm. I'm going to beat him down with his left arm. Then rip off each one of his legs, and I'm going to throw it to the guys in the first and second row. Tito Ortiz gets his hand raised, and the new WWE heavyweight champion.
Well, there you go, guys. And I believe it because as you've been doing this interview, you've got a knife in your, or not anymore, but you had a knife in your hands throughout most of this interview. So I believe, look at that.
It's actually a letter. It's a letter opener.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
no, I mean, chop his arm off with this thing. You never know.
Okay. I thought we were playing.
I'm here at the Trump International in New York, so you know. I'm actually ready about to go to have some dinner with the President of the United States. So hope you guys have a great night.
Wow. Thank you so much for Tito. Appreciate your time, man. Have a great dinner.
Nice, man. Cheers.
What's up, guys? This is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is one of the baddest men in the MMA media game. You know him from his amazing work on Sherdog, writing the hilarious MMA On Point videos, his awesome event coverage. Sexy is as sexy does, the very words written on your shin pads. Anthony Walker, welcome back to Submission Radio. It's good to have you, man.
Hey, it's great to be back. Always a good time talking to two of my best friends in the industry.
Oh, for sure. And by the way, hashtag Backfist Boys. 3 Backfist Boys in the house right now. I feel like there should be some kind of MTV music performance right now, but unfortunately we don't have our music man. Oscar on the line, so we'll have to save that for another time. But we can talk about the sweet music of violence, Anthony, because this weekend we've got the Anthony Joshua Andy Ruiz Jr. rematch. And before we finish up the show, we have to talk to you about it because I gotta get your thoughts on this, man. Do you think this is possibly one of the most important boxing matches in quite some time from the perspective of here you've got Anthony Joshua trying to bounce back from this come from behind win from Andy Ruiz. He was one of the biggest names in the sport. He loses. People can't believe that's happened. He was supposed to be the face of the sport for quite some time. And now, if he loses again, you could argue that it's the end of Anthony Joshua. So how important is this matchup this weekend? And what are you expecting from this rematch?
Hey, this is a very, very important fight. I'm not sure if I would say it's the most important fight in X amount of years. I think we probably will have a little more gravitas to the rematch between Wilder and Fury. And in fact, their first fight was a masterpiece also. So I'm really expecting something important as far as Joshua's concerned, because like you said, I mean, he's down 1 to Ruiz in a fight that he was expected to win. A lot of people coming in did not know who Andy Ruiz was, kind of slept on his skills. And when that fight started and Joshua got in his business early and dropped him, it seemed like this was a foregone conclusion that, okay, Joshua's going to wipe the floor with this guy who was also a late notice replacement. And, it seemed to be playing this familiar narrative of squash matches in boxing, but it just didn't quite turn out that way. Ruiz obviously made a great comeback and got a very dramatic finish. I really think that if Joshua does drop this one, he is missing out on some massive paydays. Granted, he's getting a massive payday for this one. I think Forbes, I want to say, estimated it somewhere over $60 million that he's getting for this fight. So he'll be fine regardless. Like, let's just be clear on that. But right now, the heavyweight division has had so much activity that's been of note. The aforementioned Wilder Fury fight, Joshua being kind of the third piece of that trifecta that was left out. His loss kind of puts a dampen on the level of interest in him, I guess you could say, and as far as those two are concerned. But then at the same time, Wilder and Fury kind of, despite the fact having a great fight of theirs last year, a little bit of luster lost on Wilder because a lot of people thought Fury won that fight. A lot of luster lost on Fury because he didn't win that fight. And then to have Fury have that pretty tough fight not that long. It was about 3 months ago or so. We had that bad cut. The heavyweight division has shown a lot of strength, but it's shown a lot of weakness. And Anthony Joshua can profit massively if he's able to get past Ruiz and see the winner of that fight if the separate entities involved can make that happen.
A fascinating points brought up by you about the loss of luster. I'm just wondering, a lot of people with sort of theories on Joshua, a lot of people saying, hey, Joshua got caught and he's not a guy. He's sort of shown us this side of himself that once he gets hurt, he kind of doesn't have the heart to come back and win. Other people are saying, hey, this is just a guy that basically got caught. He was too hurt to come back. He was too hurt to show us what he was made of in the later rounds because Ruiz capitalized on it. From your perspective, how good of a boxer is Anthony Joshua?
I think Anthony Joshua is excellent. I mean, it's really crazy to think that he started boxing so late. I think he started somewhere around like 19, which is very, very late for boxing, and had a lot of success because he's an athletic specimen, to say the very least. Now, as far as some of the criticisms about Joshua in the wake of the Ruiz fight, to say that Joshua has it doesn't have the heart to battle through adversity, that's just ridiculous. He did still defeat Vladimir Klitschko after being dropped in that fight. Like he's been cracked a couple times. I think Dylan White caught him with some good ones, but it's not like Joshua just withers away. But this is professional fighting. If you hit someone hard enough and hit them in the head in particular hard enough, they may not function the same. And that's totally understandable. That's something that happens to everyone. And then also let's keep in mind that Joshua did drop Ruiz first. He did go in for the kill and got reckless, got caught coming in. So I think it's a lot more to it than just saying a blanket statement like Anthony Joshua doesn't have the heart to battle through adversity. I can't get behind a claim like that at all. I will say this though, there were rumors about Joshua having some particularly troubling sparring sessions ahead of the first fight. There was some sort of brief rumor of I think his father having something against Eddie Hearn as a result of something that happened in sparring, like he got knocked out or something, and his father didn't want him to take this fight, but the show was already rolling. It was the U.S. debut of someone who's already proven to be an international superstar. Yeah, man, there are a lot of different things to unpack, but the last thing that I will sit here and say is that Anthony Joshua doesn't have the heart to battle through any sort of troubling times in the ring.
What do you think he's going to have to do differently in this fight in order to get the win? Because we know a guy like Andy Ruiz, when he's on the inside and he's, getting underneath punches and sort of countering, he's got a lot of power and he can definitely hurt Joshua again, and the same thing could possibly play out. What do you think Joshua needs to do differently this time?
Control the distance better, and don't get reckless. If you catch him, do not run in. We've seen this happen a million times in boxing and kickboxing and in MMA. If you hurt someone, that doesn't mean that they're out of there. So you've got to play it cool sometimes. I think in a lot of ways in that fight, Joshua might have been buying into his own hype. To have a guy like Ruiz coming in on short notice, this was supposed to be his homecoming. Well, I shouldn't say homecoming because the U.S. isn't his home, but his grand arrival in Madison Square Garden. And you look at them, the difference in them physically. Anthony Joshua is built like a comic book character. He, Anthony Joshua takes off his shirt, he looks like Anthony Walker. Andy Ruiz, and Andy Ruiz is a guy who looks like he could be your local bus driver. He just doesn't. He doesn't look like someone who is a professional boxer, and much less someone who is a world-class professional boxer that a lot of people were sleeping on going into the first fight. When you get overconfident, when you get sloppy in a game of millimeters, in a game of inches, that happens. People get caught. People lose consciousness. It's the story of combat sports.
Who are you leaning towards here? Do you think Joshua makes the necessary adjustments, or do you think Andy Ruiz, I was going to say shocks the world again, but at this point it wouldn't really be as much of a shock, right?
It wouldn't. I guess it wouldn't be as much of a shock, but I'm going to lean toward Anthony Joshua, and that's because he still is the better athlete. He still is the much bigger guy with the longer reach, and there are so many things that he did right when that fight started. If he continues to do those things right, I don't see how Ruiz gets past him, other than Joshua getting sloppy. That's kind of the narrative I'm saying, and I won't ever downplay Ruiz's hand speed. His hands are extraordinarily quick. He's a deceptively good athlete. You wouldn't be able to tell by looking at him, but the guy closes distance very fast. He's got very fast hands, and very technically skilled. But I still think Joshua at his best should beat Ruiz at his best.
The footage of him hitting his trainer with a hook, Andy Ruiz, is some scary, scary stuff and just hurts. That poor trainer. You could see things are going to go wrong from the beginning. Okay, so you've picked Anthony Joshua to win this rematch. So there's one more pick left. Fury Wilder, they look like they're going to be rematching in February. The first fight was a draw. In this rematch, Anthony, who do you think comes out on top and fights Anthony Joshua after he beats Ruiz? Will it be Tyson Fury, the man who just spent some time in the WWE, the man that's looking at potentially making an MMA move, or Deontay Wilder, the man that just hit Ortiz so hard that I'm pretty sure he's still laying on the canvas somewhere right now? Who do you think is going to be fighting Anthony Joshua?
It's very hard to pick against Deontay Wilder. With the level of power that he has. Now, I was at the first fight. I covered that first fight for Sure Dog, and it was amazing to see that Tyson Fury was very, very clearly the better boxer. There was no doubt about who was the better skilled boxer. But when Deontay Wilder hits you, it just doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter who's better. It doesn't matter how many rounds you might be up. It doesn't matter that you have better footwork or you have better defense. Nothing. Because when he hits you, it's over. And I think we say phrases like that in sports a lot, but Wilder really, really shows that time and time again. And I think the rematch with Ortiz was a perfect example. And also too, I'll get back to something that I mentioned earlier with Tyson Fury having what wasn't supposed to be as tough of a fight, where he got that really bad cut. A fight that probably, if Tyson Fury were not, the massive star that he is, that fight probably would have got stopped on that cut. That was a pretty gruesome cut that he had right above his eye. One of the worst places you could ever get cut in a fight. So, we've seen cracks in Fury's armor since the Wilder fight. We haven't seen cracks in Deontay Wilder since the Fury fight. I think we're seeing a rematch between two men who sort of should be very clear, but one of them has game-changing power, and the other one has a skill set that should be able to last the distance. But I don't think it goes the distance. I think Fury takes about keep in mind he did get dropped like twice, I think, in their first fight, including that one that looked like it killed him in the last round.
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna take too many of those. I don't think that's gonna happen too many times before your body just says to hell with this and just stays down. So I think Wilder finishes him, and I think it's going to be violent. I think it's going to look like a lot of other Deontay Wilder highlights.
Wow, well, that's going to be a fun one. And obviously this weekend we got a few tasty fights here between obviously Tito Ortiz and Alberto Rodriguez, between Joshua and Ruiz, the rematch, and then obviously you got UFC DC as well. So there's enough things to keep fight fans entertained this weekend. But before we wrap up, Anthony, by the way, I really appreciate your time. We did mention that you're one of the baddest guys in the game, a massive talent. Is it true that you've parted ways with Sherdog, and is it true that the number one draft pick, the number one free agent in the MMA media game, Anthony Walker, is now open to a big, fat, juicy new deal from the right outlet?
Yeah, free agency is among me. It's here. I am, I guess, the Chris Paul of this game. I have no idea. I don't know. Chris Paul ain't no free agent, but I just wanted to say that. It's actually kind of crazy because there's no love lost between me and Sherdog. Love Sherdog. Love my boss there, Mike Fridley. All the people that I work with, Jay Petrie, Ben Duffy, Jason Burgos, like a cast of characters there that are fantastic and do great work, and I enjoy working alongside them. However, I was an independent contractor for Sherdog, and there is a law in California that takes effect January 1st that affects independent contractors, including freelance journalists and writers. So because of that, the number of submissions that I can turn in a year has dramatically dropped. And keep in mind, like, I do a lot of work for Sherdog, and you guys been alongside me, like turning in content left and right from media days and whatnot. That's pretty much it. The parent company just didn't want to deal with the legal issues involved of having a busy contributor who is paid independent status. So there it is. Free agency is here. The DMs are open.
Well, I'll tell you what. You mentioned Chris Paul. I'm thinking Michael Jordan. I'm thinking LeBron James. I'm thinking Chris Jericho when he went to AEW. I'm thinking Bill Goldberg. I'm thinking all the big names that are out there that were free, that were nabbed by the right company. He is one of the best in the game, a back fist boy. Make sure to follow Anthony on Twitter for all his latest news and updates, as well as some awesome news coverage, everything at Ant Walker MMA. He is, without a doubt, one of the baddest guys in the game, one of our best friends in the industry. Hey, man, if we could vouch for anybody, it is this man. So we're imagining 2020 is going to be a big year for Anthony Walker. Just remember the small guys. Remember Submission Radio when you make it bigger the next one. And that brings us to the end of the show, by the way. A big thank you, obviously, to Anthony Walker, Tito Ortiz, Dominick Reyes, Jon Anik, Tyson Pedro. That is us for today. Big thank you to you guys for tuning in. We will be back with a big UFC 245 preview next week. With that, stay safe and enjoy the fights.